I would huff hairspray. I would cut myself, and it just kind of spiraled from there. I went from being an A/B student to I failed all my classes. I dropped out of field hockey. I completely changed all my friends. I started hanging out uptown more, kind of loitering. Not really, I wasn't up to much good.
I didn't really feel comfortable. No, I don't want to say that. Drug use wasn't really like prevalent in my life until I was probably a little bit older. This is hard for me to do. What do you mean? Just talk to you.
My parents split up when I was 14 years old. My mother and I moved back to Cape Cod, and I immediately started doing a lot of drugs. My mother's in recovery and has been since I was 2, so I figured if I did drugs, she wouldn't know because she wouldn't smell the booze. She was looking for booze, so I figured. So I did a lot of acid, and I did a lot of smoking of the pot.
I mean, I think my addictive tendencies started early with always wanting outside things to make myself feel better. My addiction really started though with drugs in college. I went out every single night, clubbing, blacking out, never remember leaving. People thought I worked at nightclubs because I was out so much, but I didn't. I was just 19, and me and my friends thought we were so chic and fabulous, going out every night.
I started, smoking weed, and like most of the drugs I tried, I didn't really like at first, but basically my mentality was like, I'll just keep doing it until I like it. So eventually I did start to enjoy myself when I was doing that, and it's funny because addiction runs in my family, and I have a lot of family members on both sides that struggle like I did, and basically everybody saw me coming from a mile away, but there's very little people can do to try and stop you or like get in your way, I guess. It came down to like I was gonna do what I sought and thought was appropriate for myself at that time, and I wasn't really thinking about larger consequences or down the road. I don't think it's natural for a teenager to be able to internalize the effects of decisions on your long-term psyche.
It didn't take long. I started getting arrested. The police started to know who I was very quickly, got put on probation. I got a CHINS put on me, which is, I believe, now it's a CRA, but it's a child in need of services, where DCF came in. DCF took custody of me. I remained in my home, but they still had custody of me for a long time, and by then I had already started, smoking pot and drinking on every day after school. Then I just stopped going to school. I got a lot into the stealing cough medicine from the local stores, and I was completely out of control. As much as my parents tried to control me, my mother used to have this periwinkle blue Dodge Caravan, and the kids around town would start calling it the Where's Allie van, because she would just drive around and ask everyone where.
So as time went on, drugs changed, and the people that I hung out with changed. I started off smoking weed, and then I started. I was doing painkillers, and those were too expensive, so I started sniffing heroin, and then I wanted to find out, like, all I wanted to ever do was get higher and like just numb everything that I was talking about before. Like when I was high for a while, I didn't feel like I had to believe what was in my head about myself, and I didn't have to think about how I didn't like myself, and it didn't matter. And the people I surrounded myself with didn't matter, and I was in my own little bubble, my own little microcosm of, I don't know, it's like smoke and mirrors.
I went to college, and that was the first time I was pretty much away from home without anybody looking over my shoulder, so I just took off running from there. That was really hard for me because my substance abuse mainly was the stereotypical Jekyll and Hyde. Everything I held on a moral level was gone as soon as I had any substance. So as a woman in college, there's no dignity, no grace, lots of stupid stuff. I was blackout drunk, always split my forehead open. I'm surprised it looks as lovely as it does. I just did a lot. It was a lot of debauchery, just to totally like not go into detail, but shameful things I would never do day to day, which really in the end of my my struggle there was what brought me to my knees, was the fact that I was living a double life, that I was doing things that I never would do otherwise. And I would wake up and say, you know, what did I do? And I would cry, and I would ruin friendships, relationships. I fought with everyone. I was like, at the end, I was the kind of drunk that would like punch you in the face because I loved you or hated you. There was really no difference. I just wanted to fight. I frequently came out of blackouts crying and not knowing why, and it was because somebody died 10 years ago, and just stupid. And I lost a sense of myself completely. I didn't know who I was. And at the end, I graduated. I was working at a bar in New Hampshire, and I didn't pay for booze. And I think it was the I guess it was one of those grace moments where I knew that if I stayed there, I was never gonna leave. And I would just be a dishwasher that drank every night. So I came home. I came back to Cape Cod.
I got arrested, and the Cape Cod Drug Task Force found it necessary to arrest me for things I was doing due to my drug addiction. You know, what I did was what most of us do, I believe, is we do crime because we need, you know, I needed money. I needed more to get what I wanted to get, because I couldn't live anymore. I was so physically addicted that I would wake up in the morning and not want to get out of bed unless I was going to die, or the pain was so great that I needed to do whatever I needed to do. So I did. And
if you're comfortable, can I ask you what kind of things you did to feed your habit?
Well, I sold drugs. I sold drugs on Cape Cod, and I'm not proud of it. I'm ashamed of it, and I put a hole in my community that it didn't deserve. I lived in a very nice neighborhood, very nice people, and I put a hole in this community.
You know, eventually I ended up starting shooting heroin intravenously, and that's kind of where my life really started to take a downward spiral, and really when I started to act in a way that was even like I knew was like inappropriate. I knew that it was against the grain for my morals. I think that everybody has some sort of semblance of morality in their, you know, that they like can understand, like this is right and this is wrong, and that can be clouded sometimes. It was clouded for me, but I knew that I was really starting to work against my own morality, and it really didn't feel right anymore. And I knew that every day that I was getting high just became harder and harder, and it became harder to cope. And the feelings that I had when I was younger were still there, and now it was compounded with feelings of uselessness. You know, didn't feel like I was going anywhere with my life. I didn't feel like I had anybody. Like all the relationships that I had developed when I was younger were gone. People still wanted to help me and see me, but I didn't want to see them. You know, and I tried to get clean a couple times, but I wasn't. I just wasn't ready. I guess it's like everybody has their own threshold of pain, and No, I can remember, like shortly before I like really decided that I wanted to get clean, driving down the side of the road and looking at trees and just wondering like what it would be like if I just veered off the side of the road and smashed into a tree. Like if anybody would miss me or if anybody would notice that I was gone. That's just how I felt, this utterly just useless, and that I was just a burden to everybody in my life. And it wasn't even a scary place to be. I wasn't scared, I was really sad and overwhelmed, you know, so I started to see how decisions that I made when I was younger were, you know, affecting me, and like unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that my life was going to turn out the way that it did, but it's kind of the way that it worked out. And you know, I didn't set out looking to become the person that I turned into. I just wanted to not feel the way I did about myself. And you know, in the end, it was a lot worse than the way I felt initially. You know, so it's like really like the paradox is that it worked for a little while, but then when it stopped working, everything was still there, but worse, you know, tenfold.
I think most of the people I deal with that have been or going through addiction are some of the most honest people I've ever met. You know, usually I'm dealing with them when they're at their lowest, but they'll come out and tell you everything they've done, from their crimes to their family life, and basically are looking for someone or something to get in the way of their addiction and to help them.
With most of the crimes that folks come here for, it's all related to their addiction. I mean, either they're stealing money from family members, or they're stealing money from a grocery store and by way of a robbery or something like that. It's related to the crime, but they still owe society a debt for that crime they committed. So if we can have them sentenced here and let us get them into a program, get them on the straight and narrow, which is a little bit easier for us to do here when we have them 24/7, and then maybe work them back into the community at a pace that's suitable to each individual, I think that would be a good way to help alleviate this problem and show us some success. You know, it's one thing we learn when we're working here in the correctional facility with folks with addiction issues. It's not easy. It's not easy to get straight and sober. I mean, we have people telling us when they're going into the Vivitrol program that, you know, they may have been here for 2 years, but 2 or 3 months before they're ready to get out, they start dreaming about getting high again, and that's just how the brain acts.
You know, before I made the choice to come down here, you know, I was homeless and jobless and, you know, was a thief and stealing from everybody and all that stuff that usually comes along with it. And, you know, like I wanted to die. And I couldn't stop. And I really had no other choice at that point. You know, I couldn't do anything without drugs. So when I came down here, I went through the detox. I went to the halfway house down here. And then I just ended up staying. You know, I didn't want to go back home. I had nowhere to go to.
I had become pregnant again with my second daughter. I was living in my car homeless. I didn't have custody of my first daughter. And I didn't have anyone. My family wanted nothing to do with me. I was barely allowed to see my child, and I overdosed and ended up in a psych ward. And when I was there, I kind of got that spiritual awakening of, I need to get my life together. I need to do this. I need to be a mother. And I can't really describe it. It's kind of one of those things you can't describe until it happens to you. But I got out of the psych ward, went to a meeting, and got clean.
because I was so lost and so just done. And I woke up one morning hungover, and I said that I hate my life, I hate myself, I just want to die. I don't really want to die though, because I'm still here and I'm having this thought process, which is not mine, it's the grace of God. And I went to a meeting because I didn't know what else to do. But I had the seed planted years ago. I knew where to get cigarettes and coffee, so I knew where to get help for a drinking problem, which I wasn't ever ready to do until then.
The only option I saw was like I was going to kill myself. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had a plan in place. I was going to overdose, and I stockpiled up, a bunch of drugs. Went to a hotel, called a local drug dealer. He came by. As the gears were in place and like everything was moving along for me to end everything. Some power greater than me kind of stepped in and took over. I know that's like one of those things that are hard for some people to grasp, but like I don't have any other explanation for it. I was in a hotel, and instead of me dying that day, the police came through the door, not looking for me, but for the guy that I was with. And I went to jail. I slept the best I've ever slept. Those 2 hours on that wooden bench sleeping on my shoes. I don't remember much of it because I was, again, in the process of trying to kill myself. I had consumed a ton of drugs and was done. So after all that, I went to treatment, and it still wasn't fully ready to be done, I don't think. I remember being upset when they told me that not only did I have to stop using drugs, I had to stop drinking too, because again, I was going to do what I had done before and like just put down certain substances and go back to everything else. And I'd say like when I got to treatment, I it was maybe like 70% of me wanted to go use and 30% wanted to be clean. I just wanted my problems to go away, and over time, like a couple days, it shifted to like 75% of like I wanted to be, better. I wanted to slowly get there, and I started hearing things of like people I could identify with.
When I decided to get clean this time and really try and put full effort into it, because like I said, my life was at a point where I felt like I really was either going to try and change my life or I was going to end it. I ended up looking for treatment centers, and I came down here to basically to detox. I had no plans. It wasn't that I didn't want to stay here, but I had never been open enough to think about the larger picture of my life and like decisions that I had to make. So I came down here, and I honestly I kind of like felt inside that I really didn't have anything that was holding me back where I was living before. So I figured that having a new place to start, and like essentially like it's, you like I've heard people talking about like getting clean is kind of like being able to live two lives at once, and I kind of can empathize with that, because the way that my life is now and the way that it was before, they don't even mirror each other, just in terms of the way that I conduct my daily life. I still know that that's the way it was, and it's strange to think that that's the way that like my life turned into such a young age. Like I was like 20 years old and I felt that way. I was 20 years old and I felt like I was 50. So I knew that I didn't really have many options. I knew without anybody telling me that I was either gonna like live the rest of my life miserable and like just continue the way that I was, or I was gonna try and change. And I didn't know what that change was gonna entail, but I figured it would be worth trying to change.
I relapsed in December, maybe both. A lot of people died within that first year, so it was really hard first year of really understanding what it means to not run away from your feelings.
A lot of people in recovery with you, you mean?
One person who probably could have been in recovery, one person who was in recovery, and my father moved away, my dog died. It was like a really bad country song.
But I got out of the psych ward, went to a meeting, and got clean, got custody of my daughter back, had my second daughter clean. I got my GED. I became a CNA. I was working as a bus girl and waiting tables, and I was able to save up my money, and I got a CNA, and I started to work in healthcare in a nursing home, and then I worked there, and then I worked in a community hospital, and then I moved my way up to working. I wanted to come work over the bridge. I wanted to work in Boston, and so I started working in a Boston hospital, and then I worked hard, went to meetings, got very invested in my recovery, and I was able to apply and get into nursing school.
And if I could go back, I'd change it, but I can't, and my life is where it is today because of that. And you know, I've tangled up my legal issues. I'm still on probation. It's been over 2 years since my arrest. I'm still on probation. And now, since I feel like I was such a monster to my community, I give back the best way I can. I try and help other addicts. I work in the field. I do anything I possibly can to like give back and help the community, because I feel like what I did it was justified for me while I was doing it, but now looking back on it, I need to right those wrongs. I need to fix those wrongs that I did and the people I hurt, and doing what I'm doing now is the only way I can see that possible.
Like I started going to meetings regularly, I started meeting people in recovery, and surrounding myself with that type of atmosphere, and I really had to put the addiction lifestyle, you know, and like all the things that come along with it, you know, like staying out late night, like going to parties, like trying to be clean, and not going to clubs and doing all that shit. That all needed to come to an end for me, and you know, yeah, I mean, from coming down here and doing all that stuff, you know, I'm able to hold a full-time job and, you know, like keep people in my life, not steal, not lie, and yeah, I don't know. This place is my home now, you know, for right now, and I'm happy with that.
I started nursing school in September. I had my little boy on September 16th. I had class on a Monday, left class, went and had my baby, and I was back in class on Friday. And I've been doing pretty well for myself. So, I don't know. I went from not even being able to take care of myself and having DCF tell me I shouldn't have children and shouldn't be taking care of my children to being taking care of people's lives and being a single mother of 3 kids and being there for them every day. In one of the facilities I'm at, they have these things called grand rounds, which doctors present cases, patient cases that they particularly not bothered them, but they found interesting or whatever, and they bring it up at this conference with a bunch of medical professionals, PT, OT, doctors, pharmacists, and I happened to be able to sit in with one of these as my nursing class we all did, and it happened to be on addiction. And it happened to be about these 2 addicted patients, and I listened to this, you know, this room full of medical professionals basically bash addicts, and doctors saying, you know what, it's not my problem, this person needs to go somewhere else to, you know, manage their treatment, and it's not my problem is basically what a lot of these medical professionals were. You know, this patient happened to lie to them, and it was such a mess listening to these people. And then it became like an open floor, and I raised my hand and I said that I was an addict and that I was appalled by what they were saying. And I said that, you know, our attitudes can go a long way with treating people and how we treat people and the effectiveness of that treatment. And all of a sudden, all these people started kind of raising their hands and coming out and standing up for addicts and saying that these people deserve a chance and we need to take responsibility with how we treat them and their treatment plan and continuing their plan. And it was amazing, the transformation in the room just by me saying, hey, I'm an addict and I'm sitting right here. And that, you know, you never know who an addict is. It could be someone's mother, brother, sister, cousin. So we really do need to start treating them fairly and breaking that stigma and, you know, kind of empathizing with them more, because the effectiveness of our attitudes when helping people is going to go a long way.